Welcome to Two on One. It's the top of the hour, and this is Wednesday's top-rated, disciples-led talk show about theology and pop culture in demographics between 80 and 99 years old in the Midwest. I'm the Reverend Arthur Stewart, one of your hosts.
And I'm Reverend Stephanie Kendall, and I love that intro.
I'm pretty sure we're top-rated across the board, but I'm going to go for demographics I know we got. Hi, Nana. I don't know. How have you been, Spiff?
I am good. I'm trying to open this document that you sent me. I can't do it. I don't know what's happening. But I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I don't have like 8 feet of snow here in Kansas, but I understand it just dumped on New York City.
Oh my goodness, it didn't dump, but it was really lovely. I don't know. We haven't had snow in such a long time, but it is one of the things that I've been missing. I don't know, like I had it my first year here, and now 4 years later, I'm like, I missed it. But yeah, we've got big snow outside, and it was cold, but it's really pretty.
It's still a novelty here. Like it snows like 4 or 5 times a year in Kansas as opposed to never in Dallas. And I'm still like running outside and standing in it like, this is amazing. And my neighbors probably think I'm a moron for a variety of reasons.
Nah, you're not a moron. It's definitely, there's something still to it that I really like. You know, there's a stillness in the snow that falls, but there's also I don't know, it was chaos. It was like there was flurries, there was wind, there was snow, and yet like when it all kind of settled, it was really pretty, and there was just, I don't know, the blanket snow of New York City is really lovely.
So would you say that inspires you?
You know, I was thinking about that. I'm preaching, as we both are, often, and just like the things that do inspire me. There's something in the stillness of the snow that is very inspiring for my life, especially as we lead into Lent, that inspires me to kind of slow down.
I like that.
Why are you asking about inspiration?
Well, so I was on jeffwunrow.com today, and he has a blog about what inspires his art. You know Jeff Wunrow, our lead sponsor.
Oh, Jeff Wunrow of Jeff Wunrow Designs, celebrating 15 years of making ordinary time extraordinary.
That's the guy. You know, Jeff Wunrow does not create beautiful, quality, handcrafted liturgical textiles in a vacuum. He draws inspiration from all over the place, from labyrinths and iconography and origami cranes, and even what he calls happy accidents.
That's really lovely. And it's no wonder that he has handcrafted frontals and banners and pyramids and copes and chasubles. And now, I don't know if you knew this, but he does liturgical face masks as well for diverse worshiping and denominational communities that are really lovely.
Oh, you can get words embroidered. So now I want like a DOC chalice with a swear word on a mask. But I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. I love my origami crane stoles from Jeff Wunrow Designs. And I bet our listeners and viewers will too if they purchase one.
Ooh, I bet they would too. So head on over to jeffwunrow.com today after our show, of course, and check out his full catalog. Customization options are available to accommodate the tallest and not so smallest among us.
Well, and you can use the discount code 2on1, all one word, and receive 15% off your entire stole order because Jeff Wunrow Designs is our lead sponsor, and we're so glad to be in partnership with him.
I agree. And so just so you can all hear it and know it, Jeff Wunrow, JEFFWUNROW.com, 15% off your whole stole order, not just one. So if you wanted to buy, Arthur, 2 weeks from today is Ash Wednesday. So I know.
Don't tell me that.
From dust we came. But so you could get, you know, a stole. I know lots of people who are also getting ordained. This is their final year in seminary maybe, or they're in that process. So if you need to buy multiple stoles or just one, go to jeffwunrow.com, use the code 2on1 at checkout for 15% off your whole stole order.
Wow, that's something else. And Spiff, I also got to tell you, one of my favorite things that happens nowadays is on Wednesdays, we get a notification that people are downloading our podcast because we are on every single podcasting platform.
All of them.
Aren't we? So if you haven't subscribed, you should do that. And smash it. And what about liking our page? Do you think people should like our Facebook page?
I do. I think people should definitely like our Facebook. I also think, Arthur, sometimes, I don't know about you, but I like to go to one place for all things rather than a bunch of little different places for all the things that I need. So you could go to 2on1project.com.
Oh.
And get not only our videos, and our podcast, but to see who's coming up. If you really want to hear, I don't know, maybe, what you missed an episode or you really liked an episode and want to go back, it's all in one place.
Maybe you need to listen to our interview with Quadri Harris, which somebody told me was like drinking from a fire hose in a good way. So listen to it 5 or 6 times. Download it every time, though, and we can get a good notification. We should bring our guest in, shouldn't we?
We should.
We should do that.
I am so excited for our guest today. And for our topic today, I'm not going to lie, we have been talking about Grey's Anatomy. And so here we are. Kristin, welcome.
Hi, hello, how are you?
I'm great.
So I just want you to know, my husband is a big Grey's Anatomy fan, and he was like, wait, who are you interviewing about Grey's Anatomy? I said, it's only seasons 1 through 8, ostensibly. It's so not, don't worry about it. But I was like,
wait, what?
I'm like, Grey's Anatomy is 17 seasons. Like, we can bring you on too. I don't want to come on. Oh, okay, yeah. But you made my husband super jealous. So thank you.
There are so many of us that are obsessed with Grey's Anatomy. I call it Grey's Anatomy. It's a joke. But yeah, there's like a little following in the Disciples world, which I love. So
and I mean, we're on a small little chat together, so this is how we continue.
So tell me about that. I'm a neophyte. I've seen it enough where I remember.
Well, first, Kristin, tell us a little bit about yourself. Sorry.
Sorry. I'm Kristin Peters. I'm an ordained pastor in the Disciples of Christ Christian Church. I am currently living in Fairbanks, Alaska. I work at the Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition as the Interfaith and Member Organizer. We work towards ending fossil fuel extraction, just transition, and moving folks toward carbon neutral, renewable energies. And then I, as part of my work with the Interfaith Working Group, who is having a campaign to build relationships with local congregations and trying to support them in their efforts to become green congregations. So, yeah.
It's fascinating. Fairbanks.
Yes. So interior Alaska, it was, I think with wind chill yesterday, negative 64 degrees?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was like, we were talking a little bit about the New York snowstorm that everyone is talking about. And yet, it is all contextual because we may have gotten 2 feet of snow and we're all like, it's cold, but you're in the middle of Alaska.
Fairbanks is actually north of North Pole. That's kind of funny.
Yep. So North Pole is about 20 minutes from us, which is really fun. We went like as soon as we moved here because I'm obsessed with Christmas. So it was a thing.
This is awesome. I'm so glad you're with us. So, okay. Why, again, I'm a neophyte to Grey's Anatomy. Why? What's great about it? 2, what's your experience? And 3, what does it have to do with the church?
Well, I have to tell you that I am not just obsessed. Like, I watched this show multiple times throughout the year. So I am currently in season 6. And I just started, a couple weeks ago. I'm looking at my husband, he's sitting across from me. So I'm like, when did I start that? But yeah. Yeah, so I will watch it all the way through. So I don't just know the story. I relive the stories at least 2 to 3 times a year. It's so dynamic. I don't know how people don't watch it. It's one of those things where the characters have so much to offer. I'll have conversations with folks and talk about who the favorite character is, who the ones that are terrible are. Episode to episode, you follow their lives and their stories, and it's all centered around really weird and cool surgical procedures, which I'm sure if you're a medical professional are not realistic. But for me, I'm like, wow. I don't know.
I come out of it definitely thinking I could do a thoracotomy 1000%. 1000, I could not. Don't ever ask me to do so. But in my head and in my because I'm with you about once a year, I watch it ahead. You and I were talking about this a month ago when I was on season 4, and I was like, this is so good, especially because I will name at least. I don't know how you feel about this. These latter seasons are not my favorite. I'm in it because I'm invested in these people.
Yep.
But if I were the pastor of this congregation, I would have thought to leave a while ago.
What's so funny to me is like they're now trying this angle where like Meredith is doing white feminism correctly. And it's like, this is just weird. I don't, can we stop? Can we go back? But I think what it has to offer the church is this authentic grief. There are times throughout each episode where you're in joy, where you're in grief, where you're in love, where you're heartbroken. And I think those moments are so real. And why do we watch anything? You know, if we can get involved in the story, invested in the story, then that stuff touches something in us and we come to life with it. And so it's an opportunity, I think, for us to connect and also grow. You know, even the characters that I have a harder time with, they have motivations and trauma and reasons for doing the things that they do. And so like, I have to then sit there and ask myself, why can't I love my neighbor? And it's like, it's just Grey's Anatomy. I don't even think I can say Grey's Anatomy correctly anymore. I just say, sorry.
So Spiff, first question is yours, because I'm still processing that brilliance from Kristin. And forgive me, I'm unfamiliar, but familiar enough. I never know anybody's names.
That's true. He'll look up all the names.
Yeah, I can tell you all of their names.
I was like, Arthur and I were talking a little bit before, and he's like, okay, so who is Erica Hahn? And I was like, okay, so here's why no one likes Hahn, and also people like Hahn. So okay, but this is a question that I want to pose, because I feel maybe you and I have similar experiences in this. But so Grey's Anatomy, kind of writ large, has these really strong, wonderful women in it. It has always been about strong women. Even if you're going back to, let's say, Ellis, right? Meredith's mom. Like, you have generations of strong women really doing it. And yet we definitely don't like some over others. And we primarily don't like the super, like I would say Hahn came in as just like a bulldozer. She was really intentionally good at her job. She just wasn't on our team. And at the beginning, right? Like, she was fighting Burke at the beginning for a heart, because they're both heart people. And so, like, what is your experience? What can, if we think of, I was like, what is it called now? Let's just call it Grace Sloan Memorial, maybe. If you, at the hospital, what does the church have to learn about strong women in leadership roles through the lens of Grey's Anatomy?
Oh, I think everything. One of my favorite characters in the show is Christina Yang, and I fight tooth and nail when people tell me they don't like her, because it's always about, she's not feminine enough, not soft enough. She's very hard. And there's a lot of parallels in the storyline about her being very similar to Ellis Grey. Mm-hmm. And Ellis is one of those people where even Meredith said, I think I would have really liked her if I wasn't her daughter. So we've learned that these women have had to overcome and adopt parts of personalities that are gruff, maybe. Those kitschy words like aggressive or assertive or bitchy or whatever we want to call it, in order to be successful and get where they are, and that they couldn't do that without those character traits. And and those same character traits in men are seen as good leaders, but for some reason in women they're demeaned and talked about as being parts of their personality that are undesirable, and usually related to sex. Like, it'll tie into now they're undesirable as sexual beings because they're this way.
Yep.
So I think what we have to learn from it is that it's a show that was written and produced by, a bomb woman, and a lot of the leading characters on it are really strong women, and they're strong in different ways. I can't stand Izzy. She's still strong.
Izzy is very strong. Izzy is also obnoxious, like as a character.
Okay.
Yeah.
I literally have like the actor and character thing on Wikipedia pulled up. Sorry.
That's okay. But I'm also thinking like in the newer seasons, like Stephanie, I still want her back so badly. She was so strong. And, yeah, there are so many women in the show that I think really stand on their own, and you see them come in conflict with other women in the show, and you have appreciation for.
Well, and I really like, yeah, it helps break down that women are a monolith in any regard, right? That like you have so many strong women, and I think that that's what the church needs to kind of reposture itself in relationship to, is because, what does female leadership look like when who gets to define what is female, right? Because or what is leadership and all of that. And I think that what Grey's Anatomy does is it says like, here are, a slurry of women, there are a cycle of women that continue to come through here, each with their own gifts, each with their own expertise, because they're all top level doctors in their own right. And yet none of them are really the same. There are some parallels here and there, but like, it's really like, how do we lean in, and how do we, one of the things that I've been thinking of, at least for church, is like, how would we welcome such diversity of strong gifts, right? Like we think of like, I don't know, churches writ large are probably really capable of handling one or two really strong gifts, but what would it look like if we brought in 5, 6, 7, like.
That's what I was just about to say, is that in this show, in most shows or in most stories, there is one strong woman. In this show, there are so many. And I think that's what's really special. And the idea that like, we can't have too much of that in the same room, it won't work. Right.
And yet 12 Angry Men is a show that people have seen over and over again. And there's, all the dudes. So
yeah, it's that diminishing of, not too much now for the women.
And sadly, I think that's one of the most unbelievable parts of Grey's Anatomy. Is in the professional world, you're not going to get a lot of strong women in leadership because they have to work twice as hard and they're shouldered out by less capable men. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying this, what is it? It's the Schitt's Creek rule: present the world you want to see.
You are speaking to like my experience in the church, even as a pastor, in congregations, as a leader. I've had experiences like that where I've left congregations because I was there for 3 months and got shut out and I
losing out on that. The day I fell in love with Spiff was the day that she tweeted, "This is the year I'm going to have the confidence of a mediocre white man." Because number one, that is one of just my favorite things anyone has ever said. And number two, that helped me at least check myself, where like I stop sometimes and I'm like, am I being a mediocre white man right now? Like I applied to be on the Wichita, like the Diversity and Inclusion Council. I'm gay. I'm clergy. It makes sense. And I also put in the application, by God, if you have more BIPOC people apply, do not put me on this. If you have more women apply, do not put me on this. Like I also was like, don't put any white men on it either. I'm the most qualified of the mediocre. I'm sorry, I'm jumping through that. So when we're dealing with femininity and masculinity, I always watch the storylines. There's the little queer intern right now. He talks like this, like what's his name? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
he's Mr. Unconfident. Oh no, they can't. I'm a Hufflepuff.
They call him Glasses in the show.
Yeah, they call him Glasses, but they've stopped calling him Glasses. He's also he's like the gay character right now too.
So there's apparently a traditional role for women that is being broken. And
it's Levi Schmidt.
Levi, thank you. I couldn't find him on my list. I was still.
Oh, he wasn't listed as the gay or the nerdy kid of this season.
Glasses
name Grey's Anatomy, and it popped up. So.
For Google.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, Grey's Anatomy doesn't present a traditional femininity, or rather, it doesn't. It does, because I mean, women have always been strong and capable, but like it doesn't fall into traditional gender roles. One, how do we get the church to eject those, right? How do we get the church to be like Grey Sloan, in that here's a room full of capable, powerful women? And two, the other side of it is that male fear of of being the little gay guy with glasses, right? Because he also sticks out in that same kind of way of like, I have every right to be here, but I've worked harder than other folk. How do we have a baggage room in the church where people can just chunk their baggage and the rest of it we can work?
That's a great question. I think particularly with the storyline with glasses, it's really important to acknowledge that there have always been on the show bisexual, queer, lesbian women. Up until recently, there were no homosexual gay men. Like, it was just not ever presented. You never saw men kiss, you never saw any type of intimacy, you never saw any of that. And it's like the fetishizing of women. It's okay for women to do this, but it's still not okay for men to do this. And so up until recently, there wasn't ever a depiction of intimacy between two men that was good or wholesome or real. And so Glass's storyline I particularly appreciate because of that, because I think that was one of the first characters that we saw on the show where that was explored. You know, bisexuality, queer, we see that explored with women, but we didn't see it explored with men.
I think the only time we saw it was Joe and Joe's husband on the camping trip out with Burke, but it's not in Grace Sloan. It's not a primary character that's like that you're seeing.
So how do we develop intimacy in the church? Because I think that's what's missing. And intimacy is not just sexual intimacy, and I'm not suggesting we develop sexual intimacy in the church. But if we talk about authenticity and vulnerability and transparency, those are all things that require a knowing and a being known.
So how do we allow our vulnerable selves to be present in the church without it being
without it being just an enormous risk?
Yeah, without it being weaponized. I think that's a very real question. It's why people go to church on Sundays and spend so much time in congregations, and then when crisis happens in their family, you find out there's so much more to these people than you knew, because I feel like there's this desire to come and present our best selves. And I'll never forget our general minister and president. When I was in the Upper Midwest region, we invited her for our Ministers Institute, and she came and she said, I don't know if y'all know this, but people don't always come to church fully formed. And so, like, how do we allow folks to come in and seek and search and develop and find themselves without hurting them or telling them they're wrong for it in the process? So how to do that? I think vulnerability is like having vulnerability in leadership and then modeling vulnerability in congregations. It's but that has to have a real center of discipleship in it. And I don't find that a lot of folks are interested in that. They want to go to church and they want to feel good, and then they want to go home. And that's really not what the church is for me. It's the church for me is a much deeper than that. And I don't know, apart from fellowship, that is everyone's reasoning for going.
So that's brilliant. And apart from fellowship, Spiff, I promise I'm not going to dominate with any more questions.
You're all good. Keep going.
I just wanted to ask, were you in the Upper Midwest last year?
I was.
So did I meet you at the Ministers Institute last year? Because you're vaguely familiar, and that may have
been. We met at the salad bar.
Thank you. That's what it is.
Yeah, and because I'm a theater major. My BFA is in music theater, and then I realized, and then I know, right? So I'm going to eat a banana. I'm sorry, I'm pregnant, so it's a thing.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Wonderful. Eat away. All is well. I know that I met you because I have a picture of the two of us at General Assembly, because you like pulled me aside. You're like, let's do a picture. And I was like, okay. And I have an awesome picture.
I believe you were wearing a very awesome outfit.
Cape? Was it the cape?
It was I think it's my cape and my bow tie and I was headed into in my gold shoes. And
so Kristin, I'm guessing you're a 7-wing as opposed to a 9-wing, because clearly you're an 8 on the Enneagram. Like,
how did you know?
I guess a 7-wing.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, it's so funny. So all of the words that get tossed out for these really strong women in the show, I think I love it so much because I identify with it so much. Like every time I see, you know, each of the women has a story where they've been shut out or bullied or pushed on or stepped on or had to work harder to achieve the same thing. And it's like, I so resonate with that. And I feel like sometimes I'm in a glass bowl and I feel like it's just me. Like, why does this always happen to me? Like, why is this always but then I think, what pastor was it that was, her name is Amy, I think, wrote a letter like a year or two ago when she left her congregation. It was like a big headlines. Amy Butler, thank you. When she wrote that letter, when she left her congregation, and she said, you know, she just laid it all out there. And it was right around the same time a similar situation had happened to me. And I was like, okay, this is systemic. I'm not crazy. This is what happens in the church.
It's what happens when we tell our stories, right? And then I think that's like part of it is like why I like Grey's Anatomy so much is because you don't have a cookie cutter of what it means to be a doctor. You don't have a cookie cutter of what it means to be even human in this space, but that there are different stories being told through, you know, just through everyone that's there, whether it's through Meredith and adoption or Miranda having to, you know, operate on the Nazi after being called a Nazi for years. And then like that moment in the show to take that minute to say like, no one is using that term anymore. And like I was naming earlier that I, you know, while I don't think the show misses on a lot of different spaces as well, I think what I appreciated in that moment was that often when, you know, kind of the woke culture calls you out for something, they just stop doing it and don't address it. But there was an acknowledgement that we had utilized this in a way that promoted camaraderie between the interns, you know, in a space, and that Grey's writ large in the show production took it as a moment to be like, no, we've done it, we're sorry, no more, sort of a thing. And I appreciated that. And what kind of space that would open up in the church if we, you know, we're just like, ooh, wow, okay, we're really sorry. We're gonna, you know, like, here's the church say, what does it look like for the church to say sorry?
Yeah, and to then walk through those steps of not just confession, but then repentance, atonement,
Yep.
and reconciliation. Because all the time, and this is especially with what's going on in the world right now with racism, it's so apparent that people want healing, but they don't want to take the steps to get there. It's like we run to reconciliation, we run to healing, but we're not so interested in the hard work of the confession and
because it's vulnerability and intimacy.
When we see that I think in today's medical desire, right? Everyone wants to take the pill that fixes them, but they don't necessarily want to go to the doctor. They don't want to go and confess that they've been smoking for years or they've been inactive or whatever the things that they've been doing that we are afraid we are shameful of, that we don't want to share in that space. That we want the healing, we want the easy fix without having to actually like put in the work, go to the experts, you know, and kind of do that. And so I don't know, I think Grey's really models the fact that like you know, you've got to go to the right people for the right thing. And that's one of the things that I really like about like how many specialties that they'll focus on and how many people that they bring in. You can't, you know, all these pastors out there that are like a catch-all for all of the things. It's why you have burnout. It's why you have, you know, you have
nowhere in scripture does it say a pastor should be one person doing 55 jobs. Nowhere.
Well, how does that diminish discipleship, right? So like, can you imagine what it would be like to go into surgery and not have the team with you, right?
Right.
And
okay,
so
I can do clamps. I can control the anesthetics.
Right. So, and it's like, you know, if we're not building up the discipleship of the church, if we're not empowering folks to be leaders in and of themselves, then what we're really having is just this like monopoly of power and control over something that's supposed to be given freely to all. So it's a weird dynamic.
So can I brag for like 1 second, because I am super proud of this?
Sure.
6 months ago, we started a congregational care team at my congregation, because like I strongly believe a pastor is not a private chaplain to a group of people. And
yeah.
Well, I'm not. And it's so it's been a matter of like equipping folks to build relationships and to call, and it's every 2 weeks, and you need to call your 20 people every 2 weeks. And I made the commitment to call them every 2 weeks. So like and it's this, sometimes the phone calls are nothing's new, good to talk to you. Sometimes it's I got to tell you about my granddaughter and I need prayers for her neighbor or whatever. But it's this like, it's only been 6 months and it's going to take us 5 years to really get this thing like embedded and working. And even then it has to be reevaluated. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the whole like, I've also been working out for 5 months and have lost like, actually I lost a lot of weight and put some back on because I love pie. And
But
but
you're
it's the
really good
same
at
idea
making
of
it. I've
like,
seen the designs.
what's that?
So you're really good at making it, though. I've seen the designs.
Yeah, I'm an excellent pie maker, and you can have one now. I'll mail it to Alaska, and it's but that's the hard part, right? It's it's so much time, and it's almost routine, and it's habit. I just wanted to say amen, and I could have just said that to what you were saying.
Well, I think there's another thing that you brought up when you talked about chaplaincy. And so I was a hospital chaplain, but did you know that the nickname for Grey's Anatomy is somebody called the chaplain?
Right? Where are the chaplains at Gray Sloan?
They don't ever have one. And I think there's one episode where they call for them and they don't ever come. And that's it. Like, it's so weird. I think it's the episode with a shaman. Yeah.
Could you imagine how boring that show would be if they had people who had taken CPE? Like they'd be able to resolve most of the drama in a few minutes.
It's so funny. Now, I love that they show like mental health. They have people in therapy and they show those sessions, but they never show. There's so many, especially like with April's storyline, Bailey's storyline, Callie's storyline. There's folks in there that have these, or even Christina, like Jewish history. Like there's not a lack of people of faith in the show, but they're not developed. That's never the storyline that gets developed.
Yeah. I think we saw Addison in the chapel once.
Yeah, and what's so funny is everyone was teasing her. I just watched that episode recently.
Everyone
was teasing her because like Addison doesn't pray.
Yeah, they're like, why is she here? She doesn't pray. And she's like, I'm trying. And it's like, where are the people of faith to like help walk her through that? Like, where's the chaplain?
In the chapel, which means there should be a chaplain, which, yeah.
Well, they could have a full chaplain staff, or they could buy the brand new brain scan machine that they need for someone to cut their own tumor out with a laser.
A Jewish space laser?
A Jewish space laser. Okay, I want to ask, because you're like, I get it. Travis Smith McKee, who hasn't written our theme song yet, Travis Smith McKee rewatches The Office and Parks and Rec when he needs to. Shonda Jha a few weeks ago, my first favorite Shonda Rhimes is my second. Shonda Jha a few weeks ago talked about how when she was going through a really rough season, she had Avatar: The Last Airbender on basically on a loop. You rewatch Grey's Anatomy constantly, and so there's ritual in this. So Transfiguration Sunday is in a couple weeks. I'm literally just asking for personal advice on this show now, but I guess it's also like outside. I get Transfiguration Sunday, like a woohoo. Like I'm kind of the same way with Palm Sunday. I'm like, why do you need to hear another sermon about this? I did this 5 years ago and nothing's changed. What can we say about how do we make the ritual and the repetition matter? Like how do we get through the season 7 slump? How do we what do you recommend? What's your experience in making ritual count?
Well, I think it all goes back to storytelling. There is a reason people want to hear their favorite song 15 times. I was actually talking with my husband about this the other day, that when I was a kid, if my favorite song was on and we were close to home, I would make my mom drive around the neighborhood. So she would do this loop so that we could finish the song, or sometimes even replay the song. And was
it a boy band?
Yeah, what was your favorite? Now, like, what was your favorite song?
What was your favorite song?
No, I think when we were kids, it was probably like Trisha Yearwood. I'm not gonna lie. My mom was a country person, and so I grew up on a lot of that. And there was a lot of Trisha Yearwood being played and replayed. So my point in that is that the same thing with the Christmas story, the same thing with your favorite bedtime book when you were a kid, or why people read the Harry Potter series over and over and over again. It becomes this place of comfort. You know what's going to happen, but there's this, I don't know, it feels almost like going home. Like, I can have these episodes like playing in the background while I'm doing something, and I didn't miss anything if I walked out of the room, but when I come back, I know where we are. There's this comfort in that. And there's also pieces that like I didn't see the first 20 times I watched it. I literally just watched the episode where Alex donates his sperm for Izzy while she's got cancer. And he comes to Richard and he sets the cup in a plastic bag on Richard's eating at a table, and he sets it right in front of him on the table. And Richard uses, this is so gross, uses his salad fork to move the sperm cup out of the way. And then he goes back to eating. And I was like, no, oh my God. Like I had to rewatch it. I was like, that's disgusting. But I didn't see it the first 50 times I'd watched the show. You know, there's little treasures in it.
It's God is still speaking, you know? No, I really appreciate, there's something about that. I watch Grey's Anatomy as one of those that I go back to as well, and rewatch often, although, you know, I do with a couple of shows. It helps to be an insomniac, so you can just watch them at all times. But for me, it's weird because in the chaos of the world, I go to that show because it is even more chaotic. I'll watch the George dying episode, and when Meredith, when he writes the 007 on her hand and she screams and everyone's running, but Izzy's also dying in the other room, and it's just like so much happening. And like Alex is screaming and Christina's there, and you know, do they or do they not do the DNR on Izzy and all of that. And it's like, there's care, there is focus, there is something bigger. And in the end, I also know that it's gonna be okay, because next week there's still another episode. There's something that for me, even in the chaos of this show, and they do create all the chaos, that is comforting, because and it's not the same, but in a way has that kind of Fred Rogers quote where it's like, look for the helpers. Like when things, like when he was scared and, you know, his mom used to tell him to look for the helpers, look for the, you know, first responders and things. And for me, this show kind of does that. It reminds me that, like, as I've been stuck in my home by myself for a year, that there are people out there who are genuinely called to that work of help and curing and health and all of that tethers me to something larger and yet pushes me forward for something new.
Yep. And I think, you know, when we're talking about looking for the help, especially in the pandemic, when the new season was coming out, I was so ready. I was like, oh God, I hope that they do some of this some justice. And because I was working in a level 1 trauma center during the pandemic and was a hospital chaplain through the first, January when it first started appearing. And then my internship ended, or my residency ended in August. And so for those 8 months, there were so many things that changed in the hospital on a daily, not having the right PPE, being told to save our medical masks and put them in paper bags, not plastic, because plastic would make it like a Petri dish. And, you know, who got to wear the N95s, who was, you know, allowed to go into a room or not into a room, how would we provide care for folks who couldn't, who I couldn't come into contact with, you know. So we could make phone calls to COVID patients, but if they couldn't talk on the phone, if they couldn't breathe well enough to have a conversation, then there was no contact. And the only person that was providing care for them was their medical team. And so it just really changed things. And I was wondering when Grey's Anatomy came back on, what they were gonna show. And I was actually really pleased with a lot of it. I think that they did really well showing even the distance and the camera angles. You know, the cameras have backed up a lot to give that space to folks, and the realities of even when somebody appears to be getting better with COVID, they can crash and die 2 days later. Like, that's real. Anytime I got a page for a resuscitation in the hospital, I went in knowing what it was. and ready and prepared. But it took like the first 2 or 3 times of that happening for me to go, okay, this is what that is now. And this is what I need to mentally prepare for when I walk into that space. And I think Grey's Anatomy did justice to that in a way that, like, you know, I hope people that are COVID deniers like are able to watch the show and maybe see something that makes them go, oh, maybe I didn't know it was like that, you know.
I think a year in, if you're not willing to wear a mask and if you don't know to wear it over your nose by this point, you're just an idiot or inconsiderate. And I'm assuming Newsmax doesn't show Grey's Anatomy reruns. So,
Yeah. And you know, I still hope that there are some stories that can connect with people in a way that I can't, because there are some folks like that I just know I'm not effective with. Like, I can't have that conversation. It's not going to get anywhere. I'm not going to change their mind. They're not going to change mine, and we're going to leave upset. Like, and I don't want to do that. It's so much energy after the year that we've had and the administration that we've had for the last 4 years. And, you know, it's just, I don't have the energy to expend on arguing with somebody about communal care.
Yeah.
So if there's a way that they can, you know, watch a TV show and maybe have it call them to question and wonder in a way that I can't, have at it.
1000%. I've long thought, and I've said this for a while, but I'm wondering your experience as a chaplain, or both, you know, what do you think about this? So, as you know, when we get ordained, we take our, you know, we have the laying on the hands, there's the code of conduct and, you know, oaths and ethics that we talk about and all of that. But I've always kind of thought like the Hippocratic Oath should be the do no harm part of it at minimum, as part of what we commit to as pastors, that we will not intentionally spiritually harm our people. What, in your experience, either of you, you know, should we take on in leadership as the church from other positions? I love that doctors take an actual oath, right? That all of the medical and science and all of the things that they have worked for also is paired with an understanding of commitment to community. That they, you know, it comes to this pinnacle of like, okay, yes, you are a doctor, you have all the surgical skills and tools and things. So, you know, make sure that you use it with integrity and ethics and, you know, and commit. And I really appreciate that. And I'm wondering where in our church leadership we should grow that type of a do no harm space.
One, with our youth and children. I once heard youth ministry where they always hire a charismatic college graduate if they're lucky is like asking a horse to babysit a dog. It's and like we're reworking our youth and children's ministry here right now. We had a marvelous youth director for 2 decades, and he was great, and he has transitioned out of his position. But it's like the do no harm aspect. Children's and youth ministry needs to be over planned, over prepared. All curriculum must be edited and, you know, gone through it. But like, absolutely, if you don't know what your goals are for whatever you're doing with kids, there's every possibility. Like, apparently people told children that what they did could send them to hell and God would condemn them. But children aren't able to think in nuance, and therefore, like, if they lie, as all children do, that means there's a trap door to eternal damnation. Like, and nobody thought this is spiritually malicious. Like, kids and youth, that's what I'm going for.
I like it.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it's like I see an opportunity for baptism, right? So my dog is lapping water. I apologize. I tried to put it on silent.
I thought you were about to say your dog is laughing, and I was like, that's awesome.
Get the dog on the show.
She's very thirsty.
Let's see your dog. Let's see your dog.
All right, Luna. You need to come look.
Oh, she's a good girl.
Hi, Luna.
You on one where we take breaks from discussing baptism to see very good puppers.
I see that opportunity in baptism for sure, because there's this, you know, when folks take that step in their spiritual life, there is this call to say what they believe. And I think that there's an opportunity there to say that we as disciples commit to not causing harm to neighbor. And I don't think it's just spiritual leaders that should be taking this oath. I think it should be all of us, because I have when I left congregational ministry, I was so relieved at my next position to have an HR department, because I knew the rules of my conduct, but there were not rules for congregational conduct. And that terrified me after the experience that I'd had. And that, I think, is so important, that we're not just holding the faith leaders accountable, but the people in the congregation too. And so that, because that's a lot of where this stuff comes from too. I pastored a beautiful church in a town of 500 people. And, you know, we could talk Sunday school class, they'd be in service every week. There's relationships in the community, but some of the theological concepts and ideas they had formed were nowhere present in the church. Were nowhere present in their denominations. There were no, it was maybe familial. I'm not really sure. And so how do we invite folks to consciously make a decision to wonder and call their own belief systems into question? Because I think that that's what the do no harm does. So when I say I'm not going to cause harm, and we did talk about that in my hospital chaplaincy quite a bit. I think that that question of do no harm, well, you know, I had an experience in the hospital where somebody requested an exorcism, and that's not a gift of mine. That's not a spiritual gift.
Is that one of your spiritual gifts?
It's not. And I had no experience.
I would argue all eights technically have the spiritual gift of casting out spirits they don't like, but maybe that's it.
Probably true. I agree with that.
But the ethical thing to do in that situation, so the Catholic Church does have priests who that is their gift. It's not just something that you see on television, like it is a real process. And they did a full-on spiritual assessment. Now the thing with the story with this patient was, you know, they weren't Catholic and there wasn't anything. So it was like, how do we, but they're requesting this thing. And all I could do at that point was offer a connection to somebody whose spiritual belief systems went along that line, which was the Catholic priest. And they did a spiritual assessment and took over from there. And my doing no harm wasn't telling them, sorry, like this isn't my thing, but it was helping them facilitate whatever it was for their need.
And it's knowing your own boundaries, that this is not, because I think there, you know, it's absolutely you did the right thing and the ethical thing. And that is part of what it means to do no harm. And it's also being able to know, I can't do that. You know, like I don't think we often value saying no. We talk a lot about it, but in the actual practice of it, you know, there's such a need for like, I can do all things, that, you know, being able to stop down and be like, actually not my gift. And you don't even have to say that out loud, but you have to say it to yourself so that you don't cause, you know, any sort of spiritual harm by practicing something that is not yours to do so.
Well, and we see that all the time in Grey's Anatomy, right? Like we see
that's like,
this is not my lane.
Yeah.
I think I want to put a meta critical lens on this too, if I could. The reason characters leave the narrative in part is because their contracts are up and they opt to no longer, like the actors opt to no longer be on the show. Sandra Oh left after 10 seasons.
But we are aware Christina Yang is not on the show anymore.
But she did send a dreamy pediatric surgeon. Is that right? Was that Christine who?
Yes, it was her gift.
Okay, good.
The gift
I remembered that. I saw that one live.
The gift that keeps on giving.
The gift that keeps on giving. I'm sure that there's been no drama since. And it's...
She's in a coma, so it doesn't matter. Like, Meredith can't really respond.
So
I really like him. I kind of want DeLuca to kind of step aside so that we can develop that storyline.
I like DeLuca.
I like DeLuca too.
So when actors leave...
Sorry, Arthur,
what if we embraced a covenantal model that literally says to people like every year, like Galileo Church in Mansfield, Texas does this. I know other churches. Every year you say, I'm in or I'm not in. And I'm not in doesn't mean I'm bad or I'm excluded or like I'm going to name what I'm going to do for this community. And I'm going to ask you to hold me to these standards that I agree to. I will show up for filming, and at the end of this season, I may leave. But if I go, send my character off. Don't just have me explode in a metaphorical car bomb metaphorically off stage.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I have to say is like, it's fine to leave, but the creative writing that has had to take place to like adjust the narratives for these storylines that were supposed to be more developed. Oh, sometimes it's trash. I hate that Alex went to Izzy and left Joe. That is one of the worst writings ever. And I think actually Katherine Hagel actually said that recently, which was hilarious. She said she thought it was really shitty that Alex left Joe for her.
It was, I mean, because you spent 16 years going, like, trying to make Alex the guy that we rooted for. Like, you didn't like Evil Spawn at the very beginning. You weren't supposed to. And yet over the course, he's the, like, it's the strength and the bruteness of him that all of a sudden is paired with the tenderness of doing peds, and like you wanted to.
Wait,
what?
Alex left Izzy and went to Joe.
Izzy left Alex. Alex married Joe. Then it turns out that Izzy had kids that were Alex's from when she had cancer, right?
So remember he didn't pee up. Sorry, he gave his sperm. He gave his sperm, and they created little babies in a cup. And Izzy decided to have kids. And Alex, when Meredith has this court case, and she's going against a board who might revoke her ability to do surgery
because
Alex calls
insurance fraud to help somebody.
Yes, she committed insurance fraud to help somebody. I don't care about insurance. I hate them. But yeah, so he calls Izzy up to get a testimony from her on Meredith's behalf. And then that's supposed to be like when the storyline happened, that he started building relationship with Izzy, finds out about his kids, and then he can't leave them.
And he just sends a letter.
It's horrible.
It's awful. It is. Yeah, it was just bad for.
Is that why he's a recurring character or no longer on the show?
He's no longer on the show.
Yeah, so he's off now.
Since he didn't, okay.
But he didn't die, and so therefore can always come back. Although, let's be really honest, apparently you can come back after you die. So
I was gonna say we see George quite often, so
we have to be aware of time, and I beg your pardons because
okay.
I think you guys could nerd out about this forever.
Oh, 1000%. Kristen and I
haven't even talked about Maggie yet.
What was it? We haven't talked about half of these things. We'll have to do a second episode of Grey's Anatomy, because very much in the way that Arthur, you and Shonda could do Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think Kristen and I could go on and on about.
I will commit to trying to passively watch a season of Grey's Anatomy once a month. Like, it'll take me a couple years to catch up, but I will commit to that.
Okay.
I'll be more prepared next time.
I love it.
There is one episode that you're allowed to skip, and that's the musical theater episode where they all sing. You can absolutely fast forward.
Yes, but you also have to read about it because something very important happens there. I mean, like, you have to know about,
But you don't have to watch that one more than once, though. That's the only episode I will just skip.
Okay, good to know. So what's our last question, Spiff?
Here we are. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a pleasure and so much fun. I feel like the last couple of weeks I haven't had like the passion that our guests have brought for their own space, just because it was new content for me. But this, I have been with Grey since day one, and I will see it to the end. But so what biblical person, theme, character, narrative are you most reminded of in Grey's Anatomy?
I thought about this and thought about this and thought about this, and then kept thinking, like, what am I going to say? And I have come to the book of Psalms, because there is joy, there is sorrow, there is love, there is laughter, grief, all of it. Like, there's the book has, episode to episode, psalm to psalm, opportunity for for the voice of a people and their communication with their creator. And I think episode to episode with Grey's Anatomy, I can't say it. I can't say it correctly. Grey's Anatomy, you have the opportunity to connect with not only an array of emotions, but also people, a different kind of people. And I think anytime we build connections with people, we're building connections with our creator. So.
I like that.
Arthur, you want to go?
Yes, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to say that Meredith Grey is Jeremiah.
Ooh.
She has had to completely rebuild at least once. There's always the matter. It's a Shonda Rhimes show, so there's always a matter of hope in the midst of struggle and chaos and exile. We could talk about all of the pre-exilic and exilic factors because the show basically is like, you think this is liminal space. Let's add in a car driving through the bar or whatever, like at one point I walked through and I was like, is she in prison right now? And Brian's like, just keep going. I can't handle your sass. And like, okay, like that's fine. And so it's Jeremiah is that Jeremiah, you can't grieve without hope. And I think that
I love that.
I like that too.
I'm also doing an exegesis on Jeremiah right now, so I'm ready for that to be my answer next week too, Spiff.
Sounds good. I really like the Jeremiah answer. I like your Psalm answer too. I went with Meredith as Noah, building a saving ark, building a ship that for all intents and purposes is to move humanity forward, and yet because it is Noah in the flood, because around her is the carnage and the bodies and the life that was, and it's always just right there near her. As we all know, Meredith loves a good drowning episode.
I was about to say, she loves that water, man.
Loves that water. So I think there's a relationship between the water and Noah and Meredith that I saw kind of build up, that the ark in and of itself is the many manifestations of Grace Sloan, that that she also gets to bring in and push out, that she kind of controls in a way. So yeah, that was where I was kind of like, okay, this is, plus everyone's got their 2x2. Meredith, and it's not always who you think, because Meredith's 2 would definitely be Christina, and come on in. But then I also thought Christina definitely is, for me, Miriam's song, Christina and Meredith with the going out with the women in their dancing, because that was how, for me, I have talked often about how I see the call from Miriam and all of her women went out and dancing, that is the call of the church too, with the waters behind us and the wilderness in front of us, to stop down and praise God with art and music and community. And so when they dance,
wilderness, waters, you just tied us all together, Spiff.
I know, I loved that.
Wow, this is like the last little reflective part of an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Oh my God.
And so when she, they love to dance it out. And so when you dance it out, they call each other. And we have seen why I think Miriam is more Christina and not Meredith, is that's kind of stopped when Christina went away, that she was kind of the impetus for the two of them, even though I think it was pinned on Meredith's doing, like the fact that Meredith said, or that, Christina, that was a place in which Christina really loosened up, and committed to community rather than the singular vision of like what she was called to do in this world. So
marvelous. Kristin, thank you so very much for being our guest as we talked about Grey's Anatomy today on 2 on 1. I'm going to put up our promo screen for our sponsor, which is Jeff Wunrow Designs, and it got super tiny, celebrating, I can't even make it bigger, celebrating 15 years of making ordinary time extraordinary time. I always add the second time, just like you say, Grey's Anatomy. Smith, who is coming up on our show in the next few weeks?
Well, Arthur, everyone get ready. I hear there's a football game happening next week.
A football game.
Or I hear there's a concert happening around a football game. We're in the middle of a football game. And so next week we are talking with Reverend Jamie Plunkett about the Super Bowl.
I don't think we're legally allowed to say Super Bowl. A very vindictive nonprofit owns that term.
Oh, well. Then
we can say Super Bowl, yes. We just can't put it in writing.
Okay. Well, Jamie's coming on next week to talk football and music. So And cute costumes on a field.
I love the colors of the
They're
Kansas
so
City
cute.
costumes.
We will also talk a little bit about how every time they tackle each other, I yell kiss. Because I really hope that they kiss each other while they tackle. Because don't you think it'd be really cute if while they're all on top of each other trying to get the football, they're just like, I love you. Or like kisses. Like I kind of imagine there's like weird spaces of intimacy in the tackles. Anyways,
after our homoerotic Super Bowl episode.
Exactly. And then after that, we will have, speaking of Mansfield, Texas, we will be having the Reverend Dr. Katie Hayes, come on and talk Stephen King.
Scary. All right. Well, Kristin, thank you very, very much. We are thrilled that you've joined us. We will be back next week at 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central, like 4 a.m. in Alaska. Thank you for being here at the crack of dawn with us as well. And we are going to end things. But until next time, Travis, where's our exit music?